Shall we begin or
Yes.
wait for a minute?
I think we should start at 10:15 after 1 minute.
All right.
Yeah. Badrinath is also joining.
Okay.
Good morning, Sukumar Ranganathan ji.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm very good.
Good morning, Nivedita ji.
Hello, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Zain.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Morning. Good. So, Sangeeta ji, we can start now.
Yes. A very good morning to all and welcome to the first session on the fourth day of the orientation for this new batch of IIMC. The topic for which is English media, avenues, opportunities and challenges. We have with us four very eminent stalwarts from the English media industry to deliberate on the subject. We have Shri Zain Awan, Editor, Print and Digital ANI, Ms. Nivedita, Executive Editor, Business Standard, Shri Sukumar Ranganathan, Editor-in-Chief, Hindustan Times, and Shri K.A. Badrinath, Senior Journalist. There is so much talk about English media running into a bad patch. Then there is talk about English media having a growth and resurgent period. But at the same time, now there is more talk about English versus Hindi media and the new avenue of English versus vernacular. So where exactly is English media placed in the Indian scenario? What are the avenues, what are the opportunities, and what are the challenges will be the subject of today's deliberation. The first speaker with us is Sukumar Ranganathan. Sukumar Ranganathan is the editor-in-chief of Hindustan Times. He was previously editor of Mint, of which he was the founding editors in 2006, and which he edited between 2008 and 17. He has previously worked in editorial leadership roles at the Hindu Business Line and Business Today. Sukumar, who has degrees in chemical engineering, math, and business administration, is interested in mathematics, science, and technology, the history of business, new media, and data-based political journalism. He reads and collects comic books and is an amateur birder. He tweets under the ID @HT_ED. Welcome, sir. Sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah. It's always good to speak to young people who are just beginning their journey into this fascinating world of journalism. And Professor Sangeeta laid out the topography on the various issues and the challenges that we are all facing. And I'm not going to restrict myself to English media, but I would like to speak on media in general, because I think it's important that all of you who are beginning your career get some perspective on that. I personally believe, despite everything that politicians may say, that English is not going away anytime soon. It is the most aspirational language in the country. People don't aspire to learn even Hindi. Right? I mean, they aspire to learn English simply because it opens up doors to employment opportunities here else. And while we make a big song and dance about launching courses in vernacular media, in vernacular languages, most of the books are literal translations. So even the recent MBBS curricula that was launched in Hindi, if you look at all the technical terms there, phonetically still in, I mean, anatomy is just an anatomy in Hindi. So people can read the word anatomy, but it is written devanagari script. So it's more of a scripting issue than anything else. So I personally do not buy into this belief that several people have that English is going to go away anytime soon. Nor do I buy into this artificial distinction between print and digital. It is artificial because it is something that newsrooms have created. And they've created because they believe that the digital business model has to be different from the print business model. And it has had some unfortunate consequences, which I will again speak about as I continue. I just want to focus on 3 or 4 big things. And I think these are things that you should keep in mind over the course of your program and over the course of your careers. The first one has to do with facts and narratives. We live in a world where everyone thinks that they can build their own narrative. It is a world of alternative facts. And as a journalist, it's very easy to identify the facts. As someone once said, political party A might say it is raining, political party B may say it's not raining, it is sunny. All you have to do as a journalist is, stick your head out of the window and see whether it is rainy or sunny. And I think that is the duty you have to do for your readers. It is something, unfortunately, that most people do not do. And as for the motivations of people who insist that it is either raining when it is sunny or it is sunny when it is raining, I mean, we don't particularly care about those motives, but none of those motives are good motives. There is an issue of proportionality that media journalists and editors need to display, and that proportionality has again gone out of the window. It's unfortunate that there are no TV editors here because this is the kind of thing that they should hear. The main cause for this are the kind of news TV channels that we have today. They have no sense of proportion. A small incident happens somewhere and they blow it out of proportion. I started my career in the Hindu group, and I often tell my reporters that a news item that may or may not have appeared on page 12 of the Hindu as a 5-centimeter brief will be played by TV channels for 6 hours on a stretch as if it is the most important thing happening in the world. And unfortunately, young journalists in newsrooms, which are very sharply focused on digital, will look at these things and think that these are important enough to write about. They actually are not. Right? So proportionality is the second most important thing. Context. Very few people have institutional context. I won't just blame the tendency to do quick web stories for this. Even print journalists are guilty of this. And important to acquire context. If something happens today, is it possible for us to give the readers the context of why it is happening, what the background is? Not something that everyone does all the time. It's important to do those. We live in a world of peak information. So there are always things going to be happening around you. So as young journalists, you'll have to look at them. You'll have to take stock of everything that is happening. But you have to remember that you don't need to respond to everything. You should only make a considered response to things that you need to make a response to. Most people do not. And I have no idea why they don't. And everyone is guilty of it. It's usually the digital newsrooms that are guilty of this. And let me give you an example. At the recent COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, there was a minor incident where when Rishi Sunak was on stage, his aides came and whispered in his ear saying he was needed somewhere and he left. The only country where 6 mainstream news organizations thought this was important enough to make it an important story on their websites was India. And these are all the mainstream websites, including ours, right? So whether it was the website of big Indian TV channels, big Indian newspapers, everyone seemed to think that this was important. Even the English press. And you are young, you would not know about the English press. So let me tell you about the English press. Fiercely independent, completely wild. Parts of it are lawless. These guys report on everything. So if there's a politician who's having a little fling on the side, Indian media might tend to be a little charitable about it and ignore it. I can assure you the British media will not. They will put it, hopefully, preferably with photographs, right? I mean, they thought it was not important enough to mention. But, here you had, and this is largely because It's happening, and there's this tendency in digital newsrooms to say, like, oh, we have to do this, we have to do this, and one of them does it, then everyone else does it, and everyone is guilty of it. I'm not saying we are not guilty of it. We are all guilty of this. And finally, and this is probably the most important thing that I'm going to say, you guys don't have a course on numeracy. Journalists are the most innumerate people that I have met in my life. And this is disastrous. It is downright disastrous because there are people who will give you a sea of numbers. Usually people resort to this, both politicians and businessmen and economists, especially when they themselves don't understand it. And journalists will come back and just completely recreate those numbers, which make no sense. They will make no sense because they do not have the context, and they will make no sense simply because the arithmetic will not add up. Right? I mean, I was looking at and it's something that I tell people. I mean, I will not tell you the story of what I did yesterday, but you have to do the math yourself. And to do the math yourself, you have to be numerate. Which brings me to the next point. Data gives you a great entry point into doing really good stories. And data, like science, is black and white. There are not multiple shades of data. Right? I mean, and it's so you can't argue with data, just like you can't argue with science. Like Bharat Biotech's vaccine, for instance, we all know it's a great vaccine. It works very well. But we also know, especially those of us who are people of science, know that it was a vaccine which was approved on faith. It was approved before the phase 2 and the phase 3 data was available. Right? So now, did we rush and approve it? You can say, oh, it was approved as on clinical trial basis, whatever else, but you can't go back and change the fact that at the time it was approved, that data was not available. Right? So science, data, these are all things that, you can't have multiple versions of it. Your opinions might be your own, but the facts are like, singular. And as long as you as journalists remember that, and as long as you have the skills to really develop on those, and as long as you have the maturity to make sure that your response is considered and proportionate, I think you will all do very well in life. Remember, you don't work for the organization that pays you your salary. You do work for the government. You do not work for a company. You work for the larger population of this country, which is reading the stuff that you produced, and your primary duty is to them, right? Deep down, you have to remember that. And as long as you do that, I think you will be all right. I know that I've not given you great details about the kind of job opportunities available in English media and all that, but I can tell you media is a perennial industry. There are specific newsrooms which will rise and fall. Some will be profitable, some will not be profitable, some will lay off, some will hire, but we will always need journalists. And as long as they're journalists, right? And to be a journalist, you have to do those 4 or 5 things that I told you about. Otherwise, there's going to be no difference between you and a stenographer. With that, I will end. You are embarking on a really thrilling and a really productive, a really relevant, and most importantly, a very socially important career. All the best. And I'm looking forward to meeting some of you in our newsroom because I'm sure you will come to work for us, at least some of you. All the best, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ranganathan. That was a very short lecture that you gave, but very informative. And our students have got the major takeaways that they need to respect facts. Facts are sacrosanct. They have to have a sense of proportionality. Context is essential, and they need to be data literate. Thank you so much for this. We now move forward to our next speaker. It's Shri Zain Awan. Shri Zain Awan is editor, digital and print in Asian News Network, ANI. He has worked as a producer and desk in charge at the ANI client's Singapore state broadcaster Channel News Asia, where his duties included setting the news agenda from India, reporting and producing content on daily basis, Earlier, he was senior associate producer in the India Today TV. He also commissioned content and current affairs programs and documentary films for various clients like NHK Japan, Channel 4 UK, and France 24. He has worked on news planning for South Asia with Al Jazeera Media Network too. Welcome, Mr. Zainavan.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. Good morning to my fellow students of journalism. As Sir just now said, it's always a pleasure to speak with with the budding journalists and the students of journalism. Uh, I'll be very precise in in addressing you and in laying out certain points. Uh, I joined the media industry almost 20 years ago, and for last 2 decades, even when I joined, I also got to hear that English journalism is is in doldrums, is not going to stay, and it's facing challenges, this and that, and it was kind of a bit very demoralizing when I started the career, but having said that, it's been almost 2 decades, and English journalism is here. It's striving, it's thriving, and I'm sure it's going to remain so in the years to come and in the decades to come. So, for all those who have opted for English journalism in such a premier institute, they are not going to be, disheartened once you pass out from your institute. Uh, in fact, if you look at the landscape, at the broader landscape of of English journalism over the last 20 years, uh, it has gone through a lot of challenges. It has gone through a lot of changes, and it's going to remain so in the years to come. I remember when I started my career, uh, English journalism was all about running for sound bites and gathering the information and then putting them together. Slowly and gradually, the system of packaging and laying out graphics started. Uh, with the onset of several English news channels and newspapers, uh, the emphasis moved on to the presentation. Despite the focus moving on to presentation and what we would call the makeup, uh, the essence of journalism never moved away from all those exercises. For instance, if you are working as as an output writer or a producer in an English news channel, and if you are asked to make graphics, so that is where you are not just a graphic artist there. You will definitely be provided with a with a person who is handling the graphics, but there you also have to apply your journalistic skills, where you have to convey the maximum in minimum words in writing top bands, the slugs, and the pointers. So it's going to be like this, forever. And then the landscape changed, and when social media came, it has the scope of English journalism has grown all the more. In fact, with the onset of social media and with the coming of digital platform, I would say the avenues for English journalism have increased. Nowadays, when I see young journalists walking into newsrooms and coming for the interviews and all, they have a better and wider variety to choose their interests from. Whereas when we started our career, we either had to choose electronic, which is TV, or newspaper. But now it's growing. It's social media. It's there are podcasts, there are blogs. uh, there are various varieties. And if you just you all of you are very young, and I'm sure you all would agree with me. Uh, Most of you must be on various social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, where there's short form of journalism required. If you're making reels, if you're making uh, the shorts for YouTube, that's where also your journalistic skills are going to be very handy and very useful. In fact, if you are trained to be a journalist, I'm sure you can perform better than others. If you go out on the streets of Delhi or anywhere, even in the even in villages and small towns, you see people making different creating different content for various social media platforms, including in English. So if you have the basic knowledge of journalism, if you are a trained journalist, then I'm sure you can do well on these platforms as well. Whereas if somebody had started their career about say 10 years ago or maybe 20 years ago, they had very limited avenues. Now, I can tell you from a very from it's from my own experience that when I started my career in when I joined ANI, uh, the newsroom was always was buzzing with lot of activities with with breaking news. But now slowly and gradually, I have seen how the newsroom is also expanding. There is there is a growth of multimedia where 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 young journalists, where journalists they put together small packages where they play around with the video, where they treat the journalistic part very very craftily. And if you ask a normal person who has not studied to be a journalist, and I'm sure that person may or may not be able to do that, but if you are a journalist, then you can do that very well. So don't be disheartened. There are lots of opportunities. Uh, and if you go further deep into the digital platform, into digital media, and if you have English as background, then you would see that rather than just writing for newspaper or just doing a PTC for a TV channel, there are various aspects. You have to write a story, you have to put the packages together, you have to take out a news pack, and then you have to weave it in such a manner that it's a full package is or full story is put out. All you need to do is you just have to be a good storyteller. If you are a good storyteller, if you have done your research well, then I'm sure you are going to be a good journalist come what may. English journalism is going to is here, it's going to stay. Yet there are certain challenges, I would say, and you just have to keep yourself abreast in terms of the knowledge that you gain. Your course at IIMC has been designed in such a way that it's always in tandem with the fresh challenges, and it's always modernized. Until 20 years ago or 10 years ago, the course, the curriculum, and it was different from what it is now. You are lucky that you are in an institute where all those things are taught, which will come in very handy when you actually work in a newsroom environment. For instance, I give an example. When we in ANI, when we take interviews for for say for entry level or for senior level, the your maybe people from IIMC or the young students, when they come in, when they walk in, they have studied, they have gone through a curriculum which is in tandem with the existing newsrooms in the country, which is in proportion to what an actual newsroom looks like or functions like. For instance, we ask students to listen to a soundbite and then storyfy it. Whereas and young kids are they are able to do it fast, and they do it in a much better way than those who have about say 10 years or 20 years of experience. So, challenge for you is to learn the modern tools of journalism, modern tools of storytelling, uh, whether it's in the form of YouTube, whether it's in the form of multimedia. It could be, in the form of making short reels for Instagram, for YouTube. As long as you know that, and I know most of you enjoy doing that. So if you know that, if you are happy doing it, if that is your hobby, and then journalism is your cup of tea for sure. English journalism is definitely, going to help you in a, in a very uh, in a very long run. Also, I would suggest to you only one thing, that don't restrict yourself by thinking that after, uh, you know, after getting your, after getting your diploma, after passing out from IMC, you would be applying for jobs, you would be, going into a newsroom. I mean, the sky is the limit. You can start your, own. You can be good entrepreneur. That you can start your own YouTube channel for news. You can start your own podcast, as long as you know the skills, as long as you know the basics. Uh, you're not going to be disappointed. These are the challenges, and which come with lots of opportunities. As somebody rightly said, the industrial news production, the gap between industrial news production and individual news consumption has decreased. Earlier there was a time when there were different news channels, or say newspapers would come, but now you have news in the form of, you just open, you just play with your mobile phone, and you have the news feed on your phones, in the form of Twitter, whether it's in the form of YouTube, on Facebook. If you go to Facebook, you find lots of news there. Again, with opportunities come challenges. If you ever get to work on those platforms, you have to ensure that uh, you have to be able to differentiate between cheese and chalk, between facts and fiction. That's where your research skills should come into effect. If you know that what you are told is not could not be a fact, then don't put it out. Like just last night, I'll give you an example. Last night there was a news that a noted film actor, Vikram Gokhale, is has passed away. There were certain Bollywood actors, including Ajay Devgan and all. They were quick in putting out a tweet and condoling his departure. But then nobody did the basic fact check of calling up the hospital or calling up the family members and getting to know how he is doing. So the news, the rumor just started floating on social media, and the the actors and several Bollywood celebrities, they were quick in putting out the condolence messages. So it's here that you, as a journalist, I would suggest you, as we have always done, cross-check facts from three different sources. You have to call up the hospital if you are ever in such a situation. Call up the family member. Verify the news from three sources, and then only you put it out. Because nowadays you don't have to wait for a bulletin to get over, and then a fresh news would start, and you have to wait for a breaking news ticker, or you have to wait for a newspaper for the next day. There are various uh, you know, e-newspapers, and there's various websites which keep on updating regularly. So in that kind of scenario, where there are multiple sources of news, where there are news coming in from all direction, you have to choose which is right, which could be correct, what is the right way to put the news out, which is, especially if it's a very sensitive piece of information. Uh, those are the challenges that you have to face. One more thing, you after COVID, after the pandemic, I think there are lots of opportunities uh, for English journalists in the digital format, as well as um, if you are trained as an English journalist, then you don't have to, I would say, worry about कि course कर लिया अब क्या होगा. No. It's there are digital formats which are booming. There are lots of digital formats which are coming in. The COVID pandemic, it completely changed the media scenario. Several newspapers were shut, but there were several websites which were running, which kept running, and they were putting out news, and that's how you got to know about pandemic and the enormity of the COVID-19 deaths that happened. So with that's a very classic example where opportunities they came out from a situation where things were shutting down and all, but it's I would again reiterate that it's going to stay. Also, if you or anyone is an English journalist, he or she, they are no more going to be restricted to just the journalistic aspect of media. They are you can go in for advertising, you can go in for corporate communication, you can go for the content writing in various companies in the media section. So even then also, in fact, these are the companies, the multinational companies and all, the blue chip companies, they prefer people with journalistic background. It's challenging to find a job or find a right opportunity, but then you have to be prepared for it. You have to do it because if you are coming in, it's not going to nothing. Even if you were not a journalist, it's not going to be served to you on a platter. You have to find your path. You have to constantly keep yourself updated. Like if I give you an example, when I started my career, which was I told you about 2 decades ago, we had never heard of something like SEO. But now all these newspapers and various organizations, they prefer students, they prefer journalists who have the knowledge of SEO, or at least they know what SEO is. Because a single journalist is no more confined to just writing for one particular format or one particular medium. If you are going out in the field, you are supposed to take a bite, storyfy it, write it. So you are giving it for the TV and for the website of the organization that you are working in. While you are working for the website, you have to ensure that what you write is very SEO friendly. So those are the challenges that it's that involved, and I'm sure that if you have that fire in the belly and if you have that urge, you will definitely succeed. I'll give you certain stats which to illustrate what I told you just now. According to this FICCI EI report, which came out this year, the Indian media and entertainment sector on the whole has grown by 16.4% to Indian rupees 1.61 trillion. So that's a massive growth. That's a huge growth. Similarly, it is if we talk about the digital media, despite the pandemic, it is expected to grow 17% by next year to reach about 1.89 trillion. So these are the certain facts which have been gathered by by different industry bodies. So you don't have to be disappointed, but there are challenges. It's not going to be easy. As you walk into a newsroom, you cannot expect that you from day one you would be given a story to write, and then you would be given a byline for that story. You just have to be prepared. I know it's an age where the patience among the students is not as is not as strong as it used to be, because you have grown up having everything on your fingertips. Once you enter into the real world of professionalism and journalism, there are challenges that you have to face, and you just have to be ready. Pandemic again made us a little a little lazy when we moved to this work from home kind of format. So as a journalist, you just have to be ready to go out in the field, right, and tell the world the story, even when the this COVID-19, the first wave, the second wave, they were at their peak. We were going out in the field because we came under essential services, and the idea of work from home. We tried working from home, but it worked, but it could not work in the long run. So just be prepared for the tougher challenges, for for better opportunities. There are multiple things that you can do over the last 20 years. English journalism has gone through a lot of metamorphosis, and it's going to stay. There are several challenges coming up. There are newspaper, there are English news channels, there are international news channels coming up. English newspapers, they are coming. Then there are social media platform, the digital format, it's going to stay. And on this note, I wish you all the best for your course, for your studies, and I'm sure you all will shine. And as Sir just said, I look forward to welcoming lots of you in our newsroom. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Avan. It was a pleasure hearing you elaborate on the avenues and challenges in the English media, and at the same time telling the students about the journalistic skills required to perform the diverse roles that a journalist is required to do, especially in the current era of convergence. Thank you so much. I now invite our next speaker, Nivedita Mukherjee. She is the executive editor of Business Standard. In the last 3 decades, she has worked in Economic Times, DNA, Financial Express, besides Business Standard. She has covered telecom and new economy subjects extensively over the years. She has focused on policy as well as the corporate side of business journalism. Nivedita is excited by the emerging opportunities in multimedia. Welcome, please.
Thank you so much. So the previous 2 speakers have really set this tone nicely, and their words of wisdom will be very useful. And I fully agree with Sukumar when he said that this is a perennial industry. So it is actually a perennial industry, so there is no fear. So hello, everyone. I'm delighted to speak to so many would-be journalists here today. Wish I could interact with all of you about your interests, doubts, and aspirations as you're about to become professional journalists. Maybe we'll have another opportunity for that another day. Today, I'm going to take you through the topic assigned to me. I would restrict it to journalism and not, I wouldn't say English journalism, avenues, opportunities, and challenges. Before going into detail, a brief introduction to journalism itself. As someone said, journalism or news is the first rough draft of history. Former Washington Post publisher Philip Graham is credited for having said it first. Or as British critic Matthew Arnold had said, journalism is literature in a hurry. Whatever definition you choose, whether it's about history or literature or simply telling a good story, journalism is like no other profession. Once you get the hang of it, you will want to stay with it. From the outside, it's not glamour and power. It's got glamour and power. Once you're part of a news organization, you will know that glamour and power will come with plenty of dedication and hard work, and the willingness to learn all the time. It doesn't matter what medium of journalism you opt for or what stream and beat you get. Anything can be made exciting and newsy if you learn to spot news, be observant, and never give up chasing. From a ringside view of journalism, let's move into the finer points. Let's begin with avenues in journalism. It's a no-brainer that there are avenues in print newspapers, websites, and also in multimedia such as podcast and videocast. Since I belong to the traditional print medium, I will speak more about the world of newspapers. So when you enter journalism and opt for print, you have 2 avenues, desk or reporting. Over the years, the way a newspaper is produced has undergone a drastic change because of the technology involved in the process. You have, of course, read all about the origin of printing and the complex journey, etc., in your textbooks. So I'll not get into that. Let's cut to the present. What happens now in a newsroom, or more specifically at a newspaper desk, when you join as a trainee sub-editor? Well, once you get used to the newspaper production drill, you start making pages within weeks of joining, of course, initially with plenty of support from the seniors. You also learn to edit stories and give crisp headlines that fit a slot, understand the importance of elements or graphics, the design aspect basically. It goes without saying that sometimes you get pulled up by your seniors if you miss the deadline of a page or make a mistake. Deadline is like God in a newsroom, and if you miss it, the printing schedule goes haywire. With that delay, the printed newspaper often misses the taxi that goes for distribution to agents, and the reader doesn't get the newspaper the next morning. If you opt to become a reporter, or the organization selects you for the job of a trainee reporter, you learn the skill of writing and the critical W's: what, why, where, etc. Unlike the desk person, you'll go out and meet people, go for events, collect information, return to office, and write reports. Besides spot stories, there will be exclusives and specials where you'll need to speak to more people, some of them off record, and spend more time reporting, fact-checking, verifying, and writing them. Reporters too will have to be mindful of the deadline, as otherwise their stories will be dropped from the newspaper. So quick and accurate writing is what every reporter should try and perfect. That was more or less the bread and butter of journalism. Then there are streams: investigative, political, business, city, crime reporting, etc. Let's move to opportunity in journalism next. That's the exciting part. It's completely up to you how you create opportunities in journalism. I'll give you some examples from the newsroom. Many of the people I'll talk about are from your institute, IIMC. Here's an example from the production desk at my newspaper, Business Standard. There was this young sub-editor who not only started making error-free pages very quickly, she was also handling complex stories for editing. Reason: she was reading all the leading papers regularly, including the edits and opinion pieces. Soon, she was discussing story ideas that she could take up on her off days. In other words, she grabbed the opportunity with both hands, and there was no looking back. Second example from the desk. There's this bright sub-editor who started doing voiceovers for multimedia stories. Next, he tried anchoring our daily show called The Morning Show, in short, TMS. Now he's among the regular anchors of the video show while continuing to do great work at the editorial desk. That's editing stories and producing pages. There are similar examples in reporting too. One of our young reporters, again from IIMC, became a brand of sorts after he broke the now legendary story of undisclosed unemployment data. Some of you may be familiar with his name, Somesh Jha. This reporter's beat was labor, which is otherwise a relatively dry beat. But he made the beat shine by looking for unique information and data, piecing things together, meeting people who could tell a story that's not being told, and staying on a story once he spotted potential. From my own experience in reporting, I have seen that there's no substitute for legwork. And that hasn't changed. Once, when I was covering the media beat as a young reporter, at that time, INV Minister Sushma Swaraj spotted me at a nondescript event where she was present. She smiled and commented, "Leave out some things at least." After that day, I started getting better access to her office. I will give another example from my journalism career. I was in Amritsar in 2014 to cover Arun Jaitley's election campaign. I wanted to interview him, but it was getting tough. In fact, he told me clearly he was busy and he moved on. A bit disappointed, I just started hopping from one venue to another, wherever Mr. Jaitley was going. At the third election rally of the day, he was talking about laying out the red carpet for multinationals if BJP came to power, and I was taking notes diligently. After his speech got over and he was on his way out, he stopped for a second near me and asked me to follow him to his Innova, where some of his staff were escorting him to. Is that real? I asked myself, and yes, it was. For 1 hour after that, I could speak to Mr. Jaitley and do an interview in a moving car, traveling with him to his next stop. The point that I'm trying to make is that I didn't give up and continued to chase Mr. Jaitley, who lost the Amritsar seat but became the next finance minister. That was an opportunity created with some luck, of course. Finally, let's talk about the challenge in journalism. Well, the biggest challenge or hurdle can be your mindset. In the fast-changing media landscape, where digital is threatening to overshadow print and integrated newsrooms are a reality, new skills are the most in demand. Our team of reporters in Business Standard, for example, are feeding the digital, the newspaper, and also the multimedia. Just as the desk colleagues are processing stories as one team for print and web. And yes, print newspapers remain relevant both for readers and advertisers, even as digital is picking up traction. Ultimately, it's up to you whether you want to believe Oscar Wilde, who had famously said that the difference between journalism and literature is that journalism is unreadable and literature is not read. Or would you rather go with American journalist John Chancellor, who had said the function of good journalism is to take information and add value to it? I would say good journalism is not just about unearthing scams through investigative reporting and spy cameras the way we know it. Even if you're not breaking the Watergate scandal or the Harshad Mehta scam, there's plenty you can do to bring about a change. Some of the well-known journalists we have seen, Karanjia to Vinod Dua and Shekhar Gupta to Ravish Kumar and P. Sainath, have represented diverse streams to tell their stories. So pick up the most powerful tool of journalism, the humble pen, to speak truth to power, my young friends. I sincerely hope to work with some of you in the coming months and years. Best of luck so that you find joy and excitement in journalism. There's no profession like this one because it's not a job. It's about the next story you're chasing or the next headline you're giving and the next page one you're making. Look forward to that great journey as it's worth it. I will also take this opportunity to invite this class of IIMC from across centers to apply for the Business Standard Rahul Kullar internship. This will be a 1-month program for 6 young journalists, and they will get a chance to work in our New Delhi office for a month in March 2023 for a stipend. The last date for application is December 31, 2022. And that, I would say, is an opportunity for you. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you so much, Nivedita ji. It was a pleasure hearing you and especially understanding how persistence is the key to getting good stories. And when it is a woman journalist who is persistent, then the stories are getting better and better for the readers. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I now invite Shri K.A. Badrinath to address our students. Shri K.A. Badrinath is a senior journalist, writer, TV and radio panelist, having over 37 years of experience in media. He has worked for many leading media houses, including the Financial Express, the Hindustan Times, the Economic Times, and the Financial Chronicle. He has taught at many media institutions across the country. He has been a guest faculty at the IIMC New Delhi for over 2 decades. He specializes in economic and development policy making apart from international relations. Welcome to you, sir.
Good morning, friends. Thank you, Nivedita. Thank you, Zain, Awan. And thank you, Ranga. sorry, Sukumar Ranganathan, what we call him. So, Nivedita, Ranga, all of us have worked together, only that I have not worked with Zain Aman. Maybe all the three of them have covered a lot of ground. As I hope I am audible. Am I audible, please? Yeah. Thank
Yes.
you. Yep. So a lot of ground has already been covered. A lot of experiences have been shared, and a lot of points of that need to be kept in mind before starting of the career or before even pursuing your course has been stated by my co-panelists. And all the three of them are very experienced, very respected in the profession. Well, two, three things apart from the experiences. One is I would like to be little elaborate on the kind of opportunities that we look at. Perennial journalism, English or otherwise, is a given. Opportunities across are things to find. And what to make out of your career or as a journalist depends on you and you alone. Each person's career graph as a journalist or in any associated field will depend on what you pick up either during your course or during your internships that Nivedita has offered or other organizations do offer, and also what you make your career as a journalist in the first 5 years will be the biggest foundation for your entire life. I've done for 37. Now I think I have to update my CV. I've touched 40 years in journalism and going very strong. From being a reporter to the editor, and now heading a policy think tank and being principal advisor in the Ministry of Information Broadcasting, done several roles. But point I'm trying to make is that journalism and associated or allied areas have expanded in a big way. And this point has been made by my colleagues. And it's not that journalism is a dying profession. No, there's nothing left there. That is not the truth. Truth is that it is undergoing a vast change. And opportunities have also changed in a big way. As Zain Awan has stated, from making short videos to your own blogging sites to your own YouTube channel, or evolving a revenue model for your own self as a startup media company also is a possibility. Now, before going into the diversification of what lies ahead for you, areas where you would perhaps can perhaps find more opportunities is serious investigations. Many a time we need a lot of investigative reporters. Either it is financial crimes, it is social crimes, it is political crimes, it can be anything. And you name it, and we have enough, space for such investigative copy. And serious investigations have become a thing of the, we see lesser and lesser And so we need to, resurrect this institution of serious investigative journalism. Investigative journalism means scrutiny. Investigative journalism means a lot of research. Investigative journalism means a lot of hard work, the legwork that Nivedita has been referring to. Investigative journalism also means the network that you establish for running such stories. One example from my life is the urea scam. I had to put in 1 year to investigate the urea scam. It was in 1995 or 94, 95, 96. So trying to, from a person with environmental environmental biology as my specialization, moving on to, business reporting and, investigating the financial crimes is a big makeover in my own case. So trying to even understand how the insurance works, how the bill of lading works, how urea is imported or exported, how the payments are made, how is the financial crime happening there, is a big question for me in the beginning. But believe me, as a journalist, you have a lot of opportunity to, one, learn, two, develop your personality, three, also see that you contribute a lot to the society at large or the humanity where you live. And second big opportunity I see is environment journalism. Environment journalism is a big opportunity for all of us. With issues like climate change, issues like pollution, issues like imbalance in the entire world that we are going through, especially from the the biogeochemical cycles which are undertaking a lot of change. And a lot of our life further depends on environment. And there is an economy or there is a financial mechanism that is attached to environmental issues. And environmental issues are factored into your business decision making as well. In day-to-day life also, your budgets undergo a lot of change because of environment issues. The environmental policy, environmental issues, and environmental advocacy groups, environmental campaigning. So there are several opportunities in the area of environment as well. I'm also passionate, and also I see a lot of opportunity in development journalism. Development journalism is one thing where a lot of focus can be brought in, and there are specialized organizations which deal with development issues. And there you can do content writing, you can do reporting, you can do desk work, you can do analysis, you can do perspective pieces, you can do, even in development issues, you can do a lot of investigation. I would recall one incident that happened in Maharashtra, where a lot of, a young reporter went to a site where, Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme rosters were being put up. And all the rosters showing that the job opportunities are being provided to daily wages were all bunkim. And the biggest audit of the Rural Job Guarantee Scheme happened after this came in. This story brought in a lot of policy changes and related issues into how rural jobs are being provided or rural infrastructure is being done. third interesting area, or third or fourth interesting area you can talk about is business and financial reporting, where a lot of work has gone in. Specialization is the key to your journalistic relevance as well as your own career making. Many of my friends, when we started as journalists some 30, 40 years back, we did not understand the importance of markets. We did not understand how do we look at economy. After having covered about 30, 32 federal budgets, now I would go back to see what exactly did we mean then about reporting economy and how it happens now. Now, given that a lot of economy has opened up both in India and abroad in several countries, so there are a lot of private opportunities as well. Many of our journalist friends who have been properly trained in market reporting, for instance, have become market analysts. Many of them have become, consultants. This is at a later stage. First, you need to attain these skills on the job or through your education or through your course. So, first 5 to 10 years will be a serious defining factor for your life across or in the second half. Many a time I did not see for long, but insurance can be a big area where there can make some people can make life. Insurance, actuaries, insurance, policy issuers, insurance regulation, insurance related work. And many a time insurance means LIC. This insurance in this country means LIC. Beyond that, we would not have talked about it some 10, 20 years back. Today, you have about 25 companies. Life, non-life, accidental, everything. Even the watch that I'm wearing can be insured. The house I'm living in can be insured. The car you're driving is insured. Your health is insured. And what are the terms of that? How do you advise people to take up? Even writing on insurance issue, I would see a lot of good insurance stories from Nivedita's paper as well. A good coverage of things. When I talk about insurance, it's not just insurance. It's like investor-oriented journalism that I'm talking about. The different financial products, different avenues for investment, and ready to use kind of information that we're talking about. I'm not just talking about English or Hindi or the regional languages and things like that. But what I'm looking at is the opportunities for all of you, because I think there are digital media kids here, then the advertising and public relations kids, the radio and TV journalism kids here, and all that. Format may be different. The way you present may be different. The basics of journalism cannot change. They have to be facts driven and deadline driven. And they have to be presented the way your consumer means I call your reader is your consumer, would take it. So that's the knack of finding that knack is the biggest issue. Okay, now we have talked about radio, TV, digital, these things. In many of the Western countries, you have neighborhood newspapers. Maybe even in Noida, I live in Noida. I have about 10 neighborhood newspapers where young kids report on issues in the neighborhood. And they're making life out of the neighborhood newspaper. So this is where perhaps there is a new opportunity. And once you establish yourself as a journalist or as a reporter or as one of the best desk persons, I guess my colleagues would agree that it's very difficult to find a good desk person to hold the fort and run the newspaper. And means your writing skill, your presentation skill, your designing skills for the newspaper or a magazine or a TV network is what is going to stand you out. And also, it is a fact that journalism is not as difficult or easy. And the way I have seen it 40 years back is different from what I'm seeing right now. Those days, when we used to work in Hindustan time, even to get some little bit of background information, I have to call up my librarian who would bring a huge clipping file and say, sir, this is the area on which you wanted to look at, and why don't you go through this clipping? And you hardly had time to file a story, and you want to hit the headline, and so much competition, and still you would work your way around. Today, you have technology to help you. Technology works both ways. That's a different topic altogether. But technology is with you. There are new editing tools, new journalism tools, new ways to put together your story. And it's also a fact that the story is not going to wait for you till early morning tomorrow. When I would see, like an old timer, I would take about 10 newspapers, reading them through with editorials and the perspective pieces and the edit page copy and all that. But then today it's all instant. But the instant rush to present your story, you will make a lot of mistakes. In the sense, well, have I done the basic cross-checking by calling up few people? No. Have I done my legwork? I'm not sure. Have I quoted two people to substantiate my story? May or may not have done. So point I'm trying to make is going in a rush to present a story on your web portal or on your TV networks or your digital medium or social media handle or your own blog or your own newspaper is easy. But getting it right is the most difficult part of getting there. And you have to be right, not once and twice. It has to be every time you have to be right in terms of facts, in terms of your numbers, in terms of the context that Ranga was talking, in terms of presenting. And I would give you an example. One of my colleagues, I don't want to name him. He presented a story based on a steel company, and the story went off well. And it was because of his story, the market moved, and the stock price fell by almost 42% on one day. And by the end of the day, it was seen that inadvertently, it was not by design, but inadvertently, he picked up a wrong, the report which was maybe a year or two old, and he presented the numbers. And this cost him his story and his job. And the newspaper has to issue a public apology to its shareholders, investors, readers, and also the company. Of course, it had to apologize to the company. So what I'm trying to say is being vigilant 24 hours, 365 days, every second is what makes life a little difficult for many of us. But yes, this is the life you opted for if you're going to be a journalist. And if that is the case, well, there is no looking back for any one of us, and that's where. In the case of opportunities that I'm talking about, many of us after 5, 10 years will say, "Oh, look, I'm done, and I need to move on." What am I done with? Journalism? What am I done with? I'm done with journalism. Whatever you have decision you take midlife also, it would be only based on the training and whatever skills you have acquired in the first 5 to 10 years. And many a time, earlier we used to take about 10 to 15 years to even become a special correspondent. Today, in next 2 years, people would say, "Well, sir, am I a special correspondent today, drawing about ₹1,00,000?" So this is what you would all laugh at me when I say that I started journalism with 584 rupees per month as my salary. You'd say, "Sir, it's my pocket money for the day, and I will just, blow that money away on maybe 2 packs of whiskey or one beer." So what I'm trying to say is that journalism has gone through a big change. It is no more the journalist, kuch bhi, I mean, he's a, social commitment, there is a lot of that. No, it has grown into a huge journalistic, huge profession. And numbers were provided by our colleagues as to how large the journalistic pie is. And it includes the advertising and public relations. It includes, radio and TV, where mostly many of our friends, my colleagues would agree that from journalism, people have moved on to public relations, advertising, they have gone into radio, they have gone into administration, they have moved into several roles. They have become analysts, they have become, researchers, they have joined think tanks, they have gone to policy advocacy groups. Several are the opportunities. It's not that, I don't agree with the preposition that journalism is a dying profession. Kuch hai nahi, kuch bacha nahi hai. All this, doomsday nonsense is not acceptable. See, like every other profession, journalism has gone through a lot of change. Yes, and opportunities have also increased. And we need to adapt to those changes. People who cannot adapt to these changes are the ones who would say, "Oh, there's nothing left. In our good old days, it used to be something very different, commitment, and all that." Today, if we are not committed, it is not that we are going to make our lives. It's more tough, it is competitive, and it is like any other. And unlike what I drew maybe 40 years back, today, first day, the reporter asked me, "Sir, kitna paise denge hum? What is the pay packet that I'm going to take home?" And he would not mince words. To speak to my bureau chief, I would wait for 5 days, 6 days before I speak to my bureau chief. Today, the young lady walks in and says, "Come on, tell me what is it that I have on the plate." So what I'm trying to say is that the entire newsrooms have opened up, the desk has opened up, but we need multifarious skills to be an active, successful journalist. Earlier, I used to file a story at the end of the day and go home as a reporter. But today, I need to tweet. I need to put up something on my social media handle. I need to put up something on the Facebook. I have to put a short video on the YouTube. I need to carry my, recording device to do some bites. So you have a multifarious role because of the technology as well. And many news organizations that have digital editions or TV, radio, they demand a lot from their field reporters. And even the desk life is not easy at all. So, I'm sorry to be exceeding myself. And 1 second I would stop. So what I'm trying to say is there's no issue that journalism has overgone seen sea change, but opportunities galore. There's no scope for pessimism. Like yes, there are financial issues the big news organizations are going through, and believe me, it is not the English versus the others. English media may be setting the tone, but it doesn't mean that language media or in fact regional media, which have a lot of growth these days, are not relevant. My suggestion would be, since you're starting your career, try and be bilingual. If you're bilingual, then you have more opportunities. बहुत दिन मैं हिंदी सीख नहीं पाया, अभी अभी कोशिश कर रहा हूँ कि भाई हिंदी में बोलूँ. Madrasi like me would have found it very uneasy to settle in the Hindi heartland. But point is, today we have adopted to such a situation. And that was a life skill that I made. But for you, it will be a professional skill to express yourself or narrate your story in different languages and different mediums. And accordingly, we need to develop our skills. Thank you, friends, for bearing with me, and God bless you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was a pleasure hearing you and the words of wisdom which come with experience. It's been an amazing experience. Thank you once again. I'll now call upon Dr. Rakesh Goswami to deliver a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Professor Pranvendra, for moderating this. Thank you to all the four panelists, Mr. Sukumar Ranganathan, who's been my former editor, editor-in-chief of Hindustan Times, Mr. Zain Awan, Ms. Mukherjee, and Mr. Badrinath. You can see in the comment box that some of our students are already very happy with the energy that you... So they're very happy with the kind of energy that they, radiated from your talk. Thank you. I would like to first of all thank our respected Director General, Professor Dr. Sanjay Dwivedi ji, for motivating us and guiding us through this orientation program. To Professor Dr. Pramod Kumar ji, the convener of this program, for so beautifully organizing and planning this entire 5-day event. Our Dean Academic, Professor Govind Singh ji, for always being there as the strongest pillar of strength behind all of us and sitting through all the sessions. Ms. Pranvendra for so beautifully moderating this session. And all the four speakers, some of the takeaways that I would want to go back with is Mr. Ranganathan's talk about being proportional and being number literate, data literate. Like Mr. Badrinath said in the end that to be a successful journalist and to be always relevant, one has to be, one has to opt for specialization. It took us a lot of years. I have also been a journalist for close to 20 years. It took us a lot of years to understand that specialization is the key, and you cannot be jack of all the time. Of course, it takes a number of years in the beginning before you realize where your interest is and what field you want to specialize into. Ms. Mukherjee for narrating your life experiences from your journalistic career to drive home some very important messages. Mr. Awan for telling the students that it's not just the jobs that they have to chase after getting out of the portals of IMC, but they can also be entrepreneurs in their own sense. There's a sea of opportunity out there waiting for all these young wannabe journalists when they get out of IMC in next 9-10 months. One thing that I want to underline before we close this session is that, sir and ma'am, these bunch of students who've taken admission into IMC don't believe in this doomsday nonsense. That's probably the reason why they've opted to study in a journalism school. And so I don't think we need to tell them about this pessimism and that journalism is a dying career, dying profession and all. They all believe that journalism is a very thriving profession, and it's one of the noblest professions. That probably is the reason why they've chosen to study in a journalism school. So thank you to all my faculty colleagues at IMC, and once again to all these experts who've so beautifully guided the students in the beginning of the the session. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's meet at 12 for next session.